Well, it's time to dive into the textbooks once again. Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala, of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, with us each and every Thursday morning. She brings her legal expertise and provides some general advice on the latest hot topics, and they keep coming thick and fast. She has experience that spans more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law. She prepares wills too as part of estate planning and litigation. And she takes a break in the early part of the day to be with us. Once again, hi, Despina. How are you going?
Morning, Wayne. Morning, Book.
Good morning, Despina. Morning, Wayno. So, kicking off with a question today, do you want your sale contract watertight? In this market, Despina says yes. So, Desi, this morning, can you talk us through what are your tips for people looking to sell in this market at the moment?
Okay, so this is coming from some real life examples that we've had in the office in the last few weeks. And I thought we would mention those because at the crux of it, this is all about a seller wanting to sell a property and making sure that they actually disclose what they're supposed to disclose. So it's not boring, it's exciting. Okay, and I want to talk about why it's exciting. I consider it exciting. The example that I'm going to mention this morning is us saving a client from a buyer terminating his contract. Okay, and that's a big deal. And these were an elderly couple who actually went under contract, sold their property. It was actually at auction, and they then on bought. So they bought another property as well, so they could sell and then move to their new home. And it was all intertwined and all linked. So it was really important that their sale went through, so they could then go and settle their purchase because their monies from the sale were being used to buy their new home. And being elderly, it's all very stressful, and you know the whole ordeal of moving is sort of enhanced, and it can be quite stressful. So this added to the whole dilemma. So what we want to do is impart this knowledge to sellers out there, and the market's an interesting time at the moment. So we want sellers to be well informed. There are some great tools I'm going to give to sellers this morning about what they can do to be well organized and ahead of the game, yeah, before they actually go to the auction, right, to have their property sold at auction, or before they sign that contract when a buyer's made an offer. So we want to be ahead of the game so we don't have any problems with a buyer putting their hand up, come settlement, hey, I'm going to terminate because you didn't tell me about something that I've now discovered on the property. And you should have told me because the contract says you're supposed to tell me. Yeah. So, and that's what we're really talking about. And we'll put it really simply for everyone to understand. So that's why we're talking about contracts being watertight. Yeah. You don't want to get to the end of a contract period, to put it in perspective. If it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, sometimes contracts are 4 months. You don't want to get to that end and go, oh, I've just gone through all of this and now the buyer wants to terminate. What's going on? Okay. So I want to talk about services. Okay. So we want to talk about what that means. Now, this is what happened with this particular client of ours. And it wasn't intentional. He actually disclosed the services that we're going to talk about, but it wasn't done in the right way. So when you sell a property, okay, there's infrastructure that either pass through the land and services your neighbours, or actually services your land and passes through the land to other property. What am I talking about when I say services? Infrastructure. So we're talking about water, we're talking about gas, we're talking about electricity, talking about telecommunications and sewage and drainage, right? And they're typically the big ones. So is there a manhole at the back of the property, for example? Right? Is there a sewer line or connection running at the back, at the rear of the property or on the side of the property that you are supposed to disclose? And believe it or not, as a seller, if you know it's there, right, and you say, okay, well, no one really cares about the manhole, the sewer line, or, I sort of know something's at the back, but let's not worry about it. That's a big mistake. Big mistake. Yeah, big mistake. And in this market too, when it's a little bit volatile, the banks aren't lending, as like they used to be last year in certain ways. And, it's that volatility is going to have an impact on buyers if they're looking for a way to get out of their contract. The example I talked about was a buyer who came to us at the end after 3 months. and said, look, there's a manhole at the back of the property near the rear of the property on the boundary. You didn't tell me. I want compensation. I want a reduction in the purchase price. So there was a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the person always wanted to buy. He didn't want to get out, but he just, you know, did some due diligence and realized, I think his building costs were actually higher than what he anticipated. And then he was looking for a way to try and reduce the purchase price.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was a sneaky little way to do it.
It was a sneaky little way, but we actually, you know, you've got to know how to deal with these tricky situations. I think our new name for the firm is we do complicated, you know, so we deal with a lot of complicated matters for clients. We deal with them really well. So in the end, the client won because there was no reduction of purchase price. He didn't terminate. We got it settled. Was great outcome, but it was the way that we handled it. So when you're selling property, there's a couple of tools that you can do before you go and have that property auctioned, right? So there's a lead time to your auction. The agent should be aware of the proper things that need to be disclosed, and you need to do your bit as a seller, right? Because you've got obligations to disclose what you need to disclose before you go to the auction, before the auction occurs. Or before you sign your contract to make sure you've disclosed everything. And all of this should be talked through with the agent up front. So there's some tools I want to talk about, and they're so easy to use. They're tools online that you can look at your property and see if you do have any of this infrastructure, and then talk to the agent about disclosing this properly in your contract. Because it is, when it's an easy fix, as in, let's look at your property, do a little bit of research, make sure that you disclose, put it in your contract, happy days, right? If you don't do any of that, and then you go and sell, and a buyer through their searches discover there are services on the land you didn't disclose, there are potential rights of termination in Queensland. And this is under the REIQ contract, all right, which most contracts are these days. So let's talk about these tools. So you can go online on a company called Dial Before You Dig.
Yep.
Okay. And that's byda.com.au. So particularly if you're buying vacant land or you're buying acreage property where you might want to do a lot of improvements. I mean, there's a lot of other additional searches you would do for acreage property, but this is a really good one. And it's free, first of all, and it does take about 24 hours for the results to come through. But you can go online, set up an account. It is free, and you can get information about your property, such as Telstra lines, NBN lines. This is all about infrastructure. So the term dial before you dig is exactly that. Let's see what's under the ground before you want to start digging and making improvements. And it's free. So go and have a look to see what's under your property, because when you bought, you might not have made those inquiries. You might not know yourself. That's the whole point. So do that. There's also another free service that the Gold Coast City Council provides, believe it or not, and it's called PD Online. And it's the interactive mapping tool for every single property on the Gold Coast, right? That's within the Gold Coast City Council perimeter. And you can go on, put the street address in, and it's an interactive mapping tool. And when you get on there, there is so much information about your property, from things like flood zones, heritage affected, overlays, landslides. So is it low, medium or high? Land slippage, local government infrastructure, sewer lines, stormwaters, manholes, a whole range of things. And then you just tick these boxes on the mapping tool, and you can see how the map changes. And you can see if the property has been affected. It shows the boundary lines, right? So when this particular property we had to deal with this dispute for our client, when you went on and you had a look, you can see where the sewer line ran, and the sewer line ran at the back of the property, but it was inside the property, and it did affect a very small area at the back, and that should have been disclosed before they went to auction, and they didn't, and we didn't vet the contract beforehand. So it was something that we had to deal with. But it's so easy to do your own homework before you sell your property to make sure you disclose.
So those two sites you talked about, so the dial before you dig.
Yep.
And the other one, what was the name of that site again from the Gold Coast Council?
So if you just go online and go GCCC, and then that for Gold Coast City Council, and then it comes up with PD Online. It's one of the options that you see on the homepage. And when you click on PD Online, you know, you got to navigate through it. But essentially, you put the address in, and it's got the city plan interactive mapping tool. It'll come up with a link. Yeah, under PD Online.
And that one covers everywhere on the Gold Coast. And the dial before you dig, does that cover everywhere in Queensland?
That's national.
That's national. Okay.
Nice.
So
that's national.
So would that cover every single property across the country?
My understanding is it does.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, my understanding is it does. So it's very, very valuable. The third tool, and there is a small fee. I mean, the fee is $6.60. It's extremely small.
So the price of a coffee, you could
exactly.
gain this
cappuccino.
knowledge.
Exactly right. So it's called Develo, Develo. It's an excellent, excellent company that provides property reports, and it actually markets themselves. It's called the Develo Property Agent Process on their website. And it's really good. So you can, we charge clients $6.60 because we get it in bulk. So we can actually reduce the cost for clients. So that's quite a good thing we've done for clients. But you get the report almost instantly. It's amazing. And it's Queensland based. And it provides you with the information that I said before about the property. So it provides you with if it's heritage affected, if it's got flooding, if it's got services, which is what we're looking for in particular for property. Yeah.
So it's
and if it's bushfire,
more in depth.
More in depth. Yes.
Yes.
If it's bushfire affected, you know, where it's at. If it's got if it's in a noise corridor area on the Gold Coast. Or Queensland, wherever it is. So yeah, it's really, really effective, and it's instant. So when people are going, oh, I've got this offer from a buyer, great, let's go on to Develo. Let's do this report for a cost of a cappuccino, as you say, and then we can see the report instantly, and you can attach that to your contract. It's such an invaluable tool. Why would you not do it as a seller?
Yeah, and even as a buyer, if you were looking at a home that was at auction and you wanted to sneak away and
check it out,
and thought, I wonder what that is out back, and do
100%, and not all lawyers know about this, and we're a firm that uses Develo, and it's an excellent tool. So yeah, come and see us, and
you spilt the beans. I love it. So that one's Develo, dial before you dig, as well as the Gold Coast City Council online. And we might share that information as well to our Facebook page. Take a look, Priala Legal and Breakfast Radio 97. Thank you so much, Despina, for spilling the beans on that one. Coming up next, we know retirement villages as a great downsizing option, but what are the facts people may not know before signing up? Despina has that for you coming up in just a moment on Talking Law.
Are you confused about legal jargon? Do you need legal advice but don't know where to turn? Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97. Despina, a leading lawyer with over 20 years of experience, will demystify the law and provide practical advice to help you navigate legal issues. Whether it's a family matter, a property dispute, or a business concern, Talking Law has got you covered. Don't miss out on this valuable resource. Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97.